What's up? What's up? What's up, y'all? How's it going? I am Joey Womack. I do a few things here in Metro Atlanta, but also the co-founder of Atlanta Black Tech, the convening body for the tech ecosystem for people of African descent in Metro Atlanta. And today we're coming with the first ever virtual version of our annual State of the Atlanta Black Tech Community Summit. Super excited for the conversation today. Super excited for your input. Super excited to hear from the thoughts of our experts there, our leaders in the community, not just in the Black tech community in Atlanta, not just in the Black community in Atlanta, but in the overall Atlanta tech community. So here's the reason why we want to convene today. Today is actually October 1st, the kickoff of what is traditionally called Atlanta Innovation Month. And a few things have happened since we last came together in person in 2019. So for those that don't remember, the 2019 version was held at the Gathering Spot, that super large event center. We filled up that location in 32 minutes, right? Going into 2020, super excited, and we know what happened. COVID, George Floyd, economy is shifting, tech is shifting, people have moved to the city, people have moved away. And so the climate right now is different, way different than 2019. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Where do we sit today? What is our vision moving forward? And ultimately, how do we get better as a community? And also how do we bring more of us into the mix? So here's what we want to do today. We're going to do some panel intros in a second. But before that, just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. One, we want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your solutions, but also if you could drop in what part of the Metro Atlanta area you're checking in from, or some people are checking across the country and the world. So drop in chat wherever you're watching, whether it's Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or whatever. Drop in where you're checking in from in the world. Also include your company, the role, or something to that effect. And again, we want to hear your questions. So this is going to be highly interactive. We want to hear your questions, your comments, and also your solutions, right? So we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. So before we go to the intros of the awesome experts today, here's how the day is going to go. So after we do those, we're going to start off with go through the entire journey maybe of someone in tech, right? So we want to start with what's going on with younger people. So K-12, college. We'll then go into when you graduate and you go into your, traditionally speaking, you got to kind of go into your career. Then we'll kind of go into the detailed parts around software engineering development. Then we'll kind of end up on the entrepreneur side, talking about founders and investors and stuff like that. Okay. Now, when we say Atlanta Black Tech, there's a few things. One, we're talking about the entire Metro Atlanta area, not just city of Atlanta, but the entire area, all the counties and stuff like that. When we say Black, anyone of African descent. And so when we say tech, it's just not startup. It's just not corporate. We're talking about tech enabled. We're talking about anything revolving around innovation. And we know as a people, we're used to that, right? So now that we have the definition of Atlanta Black Tech and how we're going to do today, let's go into our awesome panel. So we're going to do some intros, and I'll kick it over first to Kelly. Then we'll go John, Ernest, and then Justin.
Thank you, Joey. Super excited to be on the Atlanta Black Tech panel today. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Marble. I work at Google. I work for Tech Equity Collective. It is an initiative that helps Black professionals get into tech. We specialize in software development as well as engineer. I've been in the tech ecosystem here in Atlanta for roughly 10 years. So super excited to be with you all today.
Awesome. John?
Good morning, folks. My name is John Exum. I am the Executive Director of Technologists of Color. And to kind of summarize what Technologists of Color is, we're an organization that helps minorities get into tech, and we do that through curated events and experiences that are tech focused. And we work with a lot of different sponsors here in Atlanta, as well as I'm also a consultant for my own company, Exumatron LLC, and I'm happy to share, my thoughts with you today.
Awesome. And Ernest.
Hey everyone, Ernest Holmes. I always start off that I am a proud graduate of Morehouse College, class of 2019. But full-time, I work at Google as a technical program manager on the education equity program, where we support HBCUs and HSIs. And then I'm also the president and co-founder of Code House, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that supports students of color getting into the tech industry with scholarships, mentorship, and a bunch of different workshops and programming. Glad to be here. Thanks, Joey.
Awesome. Justin.
Good morning, everybody. Justin Dawkins, one of 3 managing partners here at Collab Capital. We are investing almost exclusively in Black-led startups and tech-enabled businesses. We successfully raised a little over $50 million last year. Actively deploying, we are at the 28 company mark and with a few term sheets out. So doing a lot of work here in Atlanta, deploying capital here, but also wanting to make sure that we know that we're a resource to founders all over. So happy to be here, happy to share thoughts. Background in the ecosystem is been around for a while in Atlanta, building a few different things, some things with Joey and a few other folks. So happy to continue to contribute my thoughts and what I see from my perspective.
Cool. So actually, I'm going to pivot a little bit. I want to come back to the panel and ask you your thoughts on just how you define community. And Justin, I'll start with you. Before we do that, so my intro again, Joey Womack, founder, CEO of Goody Nation, a kind of a natural convener of people, community builder, ecosystem developer. I also have a for-profit company called Amplify for Good. And then I sit on a few boards here in Atlanta. So like Startup Atlanta, Venture Atlanta, the Georgia Social Impact Collaborative, Emory University student run fund. And I do, a few other things and stuff like that. So let's first define community before we talk about what's going on in earnest and the young people and stuff like that. Let's talk about community. Justin, how do you define community?
Oh man, I get the tough questions this morning.
Let me be very specific. How do you define the Atlanta Black tech community? Like, how do you think about community as it relates to Atlanta Black tech? Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Thank you. That definitely helps me quite a bit. I think about the entire. I think about the individuals that anyone that you would interact with that can contribute to the success and the outcomes that are generated here. So I think about K-12 and the need to focus on math and engineering and other STEM related fields. I think about post K-12 and I think about, I don't think just about college, but I think about technical trades and how those things will be affected and utilized going forward. Obviously, I think a lot about corporations and how they're leveraging technology because either our companies are selling to them or they want to become them in some instances. And so I think a lot about obviously the startup space. And so for me, it's community is all around collaboration. I think about how all those things are interconnected and what does it look like to contribute and give. We have a give first kind of mentality here in Atlanta, or at least we try our best. So as you think about that entire life cycle, from someone starting grade school to maybe starting a company one day and changing the world and everything in between, how are we able to collaborate and make sure that they have a fertile ground to plant that seed of growth and maturation in the community? And it all starts with collaboration and working together. So I could probably go into more detail, but I think that's where I would start.
Nice. Ernest, what about you?
Yeah, when I think about community, I immediately think just about like my experience coming into the tech industry, right? Like when I was a freshman at Morehouse, deciding to do computer science, there was only like so many people I could look up to like really gain the insights or the knowledge I needed to become successful, right? To get an internship at Google or, get that full-time offer. And when we were thinking about designing Code House, we really wanted to make sure that these students had a community of support around them that they felt that they can rely on, right? So it's people that look like them and can share their same experiences, but truly can guide them into the world of tech and down the right path, basically, right? And the cool thing and what I'm so excited about what's happening in Atlanta is that normally when we think about like mentors from the tech industry, we had to schedule a bunch of Zoom calls and have these students from Morehouse, Moon and Clark, like talk to people in the Bay Area or over in New York or what have you. But now, like that the tech industry is truly booming out here in Atlanta, we can set up real meetings with these students, like one-on-one with real Black engineers, right? From Google, from Microsoft, from all these other companies. So I'm just super excited to see like how this ecosystem is truly growing. And like I think of it like as a renaissance now. Kelly, I don't know how you feel, but like I could walk around the Google office and I always say like my toxic trait is that I know every single Black person at Google, and like I walk around the office now and I don't know everyone, and that's amazing to me, right? That there's just so many people that look like us in this field.
Nice. Actually, yeah, Kelly, I want to hop into you next. I mean, how do you think about community as it relates to Black tech in Atlanta?
Yeah, plus one, Ernest, for sure. The office at Google it's, you know, I often hear people say I've never seen anything like it. So it's really great to be a part of that. I would say when I think about community, I think about building, amplifying, and empowering, right? So when we think about community, we're building connections, we're building bridges, and we're building relationships. We're amplifying our voices, we're reaching out to people in the industry, from leaders to people who have their feet on the ground. And then we're empowering the younger generation. So I think all of those kind of factors have to go into community. And what I've seen from the last like 10 years within tech, it continues to have this strong foundation, like Justin said, where we give first. So we are always pouring into others, always pouring into organizations. And I think Goody Nation is a great example of that.
Nice. And John, what about you?
I echo everything that was said already, but what I would like to add to it is, all the tech organizations that are here in Atlanta that are focused on Black and brown people, all working together and working together to help our community. What I like to coin the term level up in their tech journey. And so, with what we do at Technologists of Color, we're about community. We're about helping each other grow, as well as leveling up in your tech career.
Nice. And so, before we kick it to Ernest, let's talk about what's going on with people in college and things of that nature. I want to hear from you all. We're actually going to bring up another guest in a second. We're going to hear from everyone. So if you can drop in chat, or tweet out or post on social, like what your thoughts of Atlanta Black tech community are. Like, what does it mean? How do you define it? And things of that nature, right? So next up, before we go to Ernest, I actually want to bring another guest to the stage. We have Kylan Kester here. Kylan, do you want to do just two things? Do you want to do a quick intro, and then two, just share how you define the Atlanta Black tech community?
Yeah, and thank you for having me. My name is Kylan Kester, everybody. I currently serve as the community coordinator at Startup Atlanta. Our main mission is to help connect, promote, and grow the local startup ecosystem. And my kind of vision on the ATL Black tech community is that it's promising. I think that we already have a really great mix of all of the great things that we need as Black founders here in Atlanta, from the university ecosystem, HBCUs, and other institutions, universities here that have predominantly Black students that are in different majors that offer tons of really great talent. We have companies here to offer really great opportunities for people to be able to work with companies and also learn from companies, and then decide to start their own business if they decide to. And then we have, of course, as you all know, like the culture here, and we have all of the different things that Atlanta is known for, from music and entertainment to art, film. And so there's tons of opportunity for us to start to influence a lot of what it is that our Black community already drives.
There it is. I love it. Okay, so Ernest, let's kick it to you. What are you seeing in your work, right? Maybe you can dig a little bit deeper into the work you all are doing, but also what do you see in your work with young people here in Atlanta?
Yeah, just to give everyone background for Code House, we have a Scholars Initiative that really focuses on that gap between high school and college, right? So if you're a student in senior year of high school and you're interested in going to HBCU, one of the ones that we work with so far, hopefully we can expand to all of them down the line, but and interested in tech, you can actually apply for our Scholars Initiative. And if you get in, you get a 4-week summer bridge program the summer before you get into college to learn the intro to computer science and get a lot of industry exposure. Throughout your freshman year, you actually get mentors from the industry, from companies like Google or PayPal or Microsoft. And then you also get a collegiate mentor, like a big brother, big sister for you on that academic journey. And of course, you get $20,000 in scholarships. And if I could narrow down how I see these current students are going through our programs, it's hunger, right? These are students who spent 2 to 3 years virtually, right, navigating a whole pandemic. they are hungry for opportunity. And it's so refreshing working with these students because you can see that like the future, especially of Black leaders in tech, are in good hands. I know, Joey, we got to connect briefly not too long ago because like some of our scholars were kicking butt in a Zilla hackathon the other day, right? But you can really see that these students are curious and they're striving for greatness within the tech industry. And the one thing that I just want us to make sure that we're being mindful as leaders in this tech ecosystem, especially as we continue to build out the Black tech ecosystem, right, is that we need to just be very mindful with the impact that we have, not only in the K-12 systems, but with our education, our higher education systems as well, right? There's a lot of resources and support that we could be providing with these students, and making sure that we just do it with the right intentions and being proactive with making sure that they get all the resources that they need or that they're seeking so that they can be successful within it, right? Working in the space that I do, like we get reached out by tons of different companies with tons of different ideas on how to navigate working with our students. But at the end of the day, what I share with my scholars or with students in the college space in general is just like, there's thousands of paths you can go down, explore them all, and then once you can start narrowing down one of the many paths that you want to go through, stick with it, right? And really try to build out your skills so that you can become successsul. I told them I'm very biased. I would love for them all to be software engineers and follow my path like I did, right? And come work at Google or something like that, right? But of course, they need to figure out what works for them at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I love it. And again, panelists, if you have any other thoughts as well, you can jump in. Again, for those watching, if you have a question or especially or a comment, but especially a question about what's going on with young people here in Atlanta as it relates to tech, please drop it in chat. So one thing I think about, Ernest, so last year I did some work with UNCF and kind of analyzing what's going on with the HBCU tech communities really across the country. And so one of the things that we identified is something like almost $100 million has gone into the AUC as it relates to tech since George Floyd. $100 million, like, which is by far the most of any kind of group of schools. I mean, traditionally, or what we've seen is that a lot of the money for support in HBCUs in tech goes to a top 6 or 7 schools: Howard, FAMU, Hampton, a few others, in the AUC is right there. So I think it's a big responsibility on us as a city, right? When we take the lion's share of all the money that's going into HBCUs as it relates to tech, like, what are we going to do with it? Right? Are we going to capitalize? I don't know about you. Sometimes I feel pressure, like, so again, pre George Floyd is like, we need support. Then we got a ton of support. Tons of physical spaces have opened up, tons of programs and opportunities. So I don't know. I mean, what do you, any thoughts on that, Ernest?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, like, just being like, when all of this is happening, like, even just thinking about my personal growth, like, I just graduated in 2019, right? So I'm like coming out of that college space, going into this new grad space, right? So still navigating my own pathway myself. But you can definitely see a shift in the narrative of just like companies finally understanding or finally hearing us, right? And trying to put money or resources into these areas. When I think about, like, yeah, $100 million is a lot of money for the AUC, right? But it's like almost like, I think of like that visual of like the AUC, I want to say they're like drowning, like trying to stay afloat, right? They're treading water, and then like you have all these other HBCUs that are definitely trying to do the same thing. And like making sure that the money is like being used responsibly, I think is definitely one thing. But I think that's on both ends, right? The AUC needs to make sure that they're using the money correctly, but the people who are giving the money needs to make sure that they're holding them accountable to making sure that whatever results that they want, it happens, right? And there are a lot of great people, I think, that are finally making sure, like, that are on the other side of things and making sure that everything is going to be used responsibly. So I think, like, it's a lot to be like, hey, take $100 million and like to expect like immediate results. So now we're at the point like, cool, let's digest that we got $100 million or like X amount of money, right? And this goes for all these schools. How can we use this in the most responsible and efficient way? And you're starting to see those conversations happen now, and you're going to start seeing the results of that very, very soon.
Yeah.
And being on campus, and it's like it's truly like a magical feeling, like being on campus, and like even like speaking with President Thomas or like some of the faculty in the CS departments. Like I'm excited to see the state of the AUC within 5 to 10 years. Like truly, I think a lot of these HBCUs are about to be like there's no reason to go to some of those other top institutions anymore. Like you can really just go to Morehouse and become one of the best computer science majors. Period. Right. So it's an exciting time.
I love it. I love it. And I don't know if any other panelists here have any thoughts on this. I think, I do think, by 2025, 2027, we're going to really see the dividends pay off. We're going to see that investment really, really pay off. Right. So, and I think from us as a city perspective, kind of selfishly, we want to keep the talent in the city if at all possible. We know that people they move from all over the country and world to go to the AUC, and then they may get a job and go to other cities like New York or Bay Area or wherever, or back home. But if we can keep that talent here, I think it'll be a good look.
Which is a great point to make right now, like with how all companies are growing their mark in Atlanta. Like you don't need to go to the Bay anymore. You don't need to go to New York. You don't need to move away from family. If you are from Atlanta, you can stay here. I think that's a big selling point for a lot of students now. It's like the amount of students that ask me like, hey, can I intern in Atlanta? I'm like, personally, I'm like, I want you to go experience the Bay Area for a summer or go experience like Austin, Texas or something like that, right? And then come back home if you want to do so. But the fact that these students have the opportunity to stay in Atlanta, I think is truly just going to keep building this ecosystem to become one of the most robust ones in the nation.
I'm with you. Justin, you have a thought?
Yeah, I think, Ernest, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think to be additive, one of the, yes, and in the Goody Nation world, I think one of the things that's really important is to not wait for the money. I think the money takes time. It takes time to proliferate through an ecosystem and into an institution like a school. And so we're talking a lot about what does 2025, 2027 look like. And I just think about what we can do now and how important it is to get opportunities and really the thing that we need from these corporations, along with their dollars, which we very much appreciate, is their networks, because the networks are how these businesses are built and the value is created. And I would say that's that contributes to the entire ecosystem. When founders are successful or they're getting deals and opportunities to work with corporations and they become marquee customers, those logos on those websites and those resumes speak volumes, and that's actually what increases the likelihood of retaining some of that talent. We can start doing that now, building those relationships and that rapport with young people, young graduates, and making sure that they have opportunities to go beyond internships and into apprenticeships, where they're actually shadowing, where they're actually being a part of something that's much, far more intentional than just sheer exposure. How can we get them to actually be better practitioners within their fields? So just thinking about that particular stage and all this money is we should also be looking to these corporations to help organize places to convene and underwrite other initiatives that bring their networks and their resources to those same folks that will be impacted. So we don't have to wait for the results of all these dollars, proliferating through those ecosystems. We don't have to wait till 2025 to see those things. So that's just what I wanted to share.
Nice. So I'm going to go to Kylan, and then we'll go to Kelly after that.
Yeah, I'll say, it's really, I love this panel you put together. One of the things I'll say, to Ernest's point, I also graduated 2019 with Ernest. And, I kind of went through that process of trying to find out who I was as a student as well. First semester at Morehouse in computer science. And I came to find that I'm not a technical person. And I even had our person at Google, the software engineer that was teaching us our class, say, oh, well, if this is something you're passionate about, you need to find something that would be a better fit for you. And so one of the things that I've urged this community to also be mindful of is to create opportunities and spaces in the tech industry that don't just focus in technology skill sets, whether it be focused in product, marketing, design, sales, fundraising, whatever that looks like, creating more of those opportunities so that people have a way to get into this industry and also make a name for themselves and be able to build whatever it is that they're also looking to build.
Nice. Now, and before we go to Kelly, quick thing. So 2019, was that the Robert Smith
Yes.
class?
Yes.
So again, I'm not sure you all situations or not, but I mean, let's assume for a second it is, right? I mean, these awesome cats right here graduated 3 years ago now, something like that.
Yeah.
Robert Smith, just as a proxy, like, obviously took care of debt and things of that nature. Cats are already leaders now in the local ecosystem. So when you start to talk about the impact of that type of investment, we're already seeing it here locally. Like two cats, young. Like, I wasn't doing this type of stuff when I was, when I had a startup and stuff, but not just doing stuff, but leading this type of like payoff we're seeing already. So Kelly, though, I want to kick it to you for any thoughts.
Yeah, sure. And, building on community, and when you think about this younger generation, I was just about to say that they're not waiting for the money. They're not waiting for the opportunity. They're creating it. And you see it every day. Just going to different conferences and talking to the younger tech village, if you will, you hear it, you hear the passion, you hear the drive, and then you see these sub communities that are forming too. Like, you have these different communities on social media platforms where they're helping and building each other. I'm seeing on TikTok for the past year how to break into tech. As Kaylin mentioned, you have these tech adjacent roles. So if you're not technical, you can still be in this space and still flourish. I think being in tech is one of the biggest ways when you think about economic empowerment. So how to close that gap, how to give back to your communities, and also how to build for the future. And this generation has it right. So super excited.
There it is. And, I'll say this too, like, I mean, we're talking about the AUC here, just this particular moment, but obviously, what Georgia State has going on is just absolutely phenomenal. Like, even shout out to people like Berkeley Baker and a few other folks over there at State. We still obviously have Georgia Tech, who, in Emory, who have their, maybe a smaller number, obviously, than something like the AUC or Georgia State, but they still are producing amazing Black talent in tech. Kennesaw State, Clayton State, and so on, and then the list goes on and on, right? So, I mean, we have, I think, a unique ability in this particular country, or unique opportunity in this country, to develop young talent, plug them into the overall tech community, develop wealth, develop connections, develop leaders, and really define what it looks like to build tech community really globally, quite honestly, for people of color. Okay. So good stuff. If no one has any other questions, I see a bunch of people in chat. Valerie, I see Alex, and Jerome King. I mean, the tons and tons of people, Jack, Simro and stuff like that. So tons and tons of people watching all over social. Let's move a little bit now from tech workforce development. Now let's go a little bit into, once they kind of get a quote unquote real job, so to speak. I'm saying that on purpose, right? Maybe they go work for a tech company. Kelly, I'd love to kick it to you to talk about some of the work maybe you're doing. Let's start with it. Can you go a little bit deeper into the work that you're doing with Tech Equity Collective?
Sure thing. So Tech Equity Collective is a Google initiative. It started after the death of George Floyd, where Google really much made these equity commitments to the Black community and said, hey, we want to help support, we want to help build economic empowerment. So that's Tech Equity was born. Our main derivatives are to scale holistic, lucrative, and efficient pathways. The way we do that is by demystifying, deploying, and developing Black talent. We do that with partnerships, creating programming, as well as cultural experiences. So to date, we've been to CultureCon, we've been to Something in the Water, and we also created these programs with these cohorts with cloud, web, and Android. And from there, we help with post-graduation placement, and then building a community that folks can come to and get resources to help them in their journey in tech. We recently got super hyper-focused, so we're focusing on developers and engineers in just those really hyper technical roles.
Nice. So, I mean, I love what you all are doing over there. I think you can use this as an example about what it means to build, equity in general, right? But also in Atlanta. I think from kind of what was alluded to earlier, like I think we have the unique opportunity in Atlanta to have a large group of people in tech. So again, over the last 2 years, tons of companies, large tech companies, have opened up headquarters here, second headquarters here, offices and things of that nature. And they are coming, to be clear, in many cases, they are coming because of the diversity around Atlanta, particularly Black diversity. And in many cases, that the attention came from what was built from doing State of the Atlanta Black Tech and intentional efforts over the last 5 to 10 years, right? So now you have a huge influx of people moving from across the country. You have a huge number of people staying in Atlanta because they were graduating from schools here, right? And so I think it shifted the ecosystem a bit. I mean, they're good and maybe some ways to improve, right? But I think if we had to put a number on it, I'd probably put the number of corporate tech, of Black people in corporate tech, and I'd love to have anybody's on the panel's thoughts, and even the audience here. I mean, it's probably 40 to 50,000 people, right? And so again, when we say tech, I want to be inclusive, right? Not just engineering and development, people that work at tech companies, people that are doing, design, people that are doing digital marketing, so on and so forth. I mean, that's a lot of people, and I may actually be underselling a little bit. I don't know. I mean, Justin, let's play a little bit of game here. You think it's higher or lower than 50,000?
Oh, it's definitely higher.
What do you think it is?
Probably double what you said.
Wow. Okay. Metro Atlanta, 100,000. John, what do you think?
I agree. I think it's over 100,000.
Wow.
Personally,
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Ernest, what about you?
I was with you, man. I was thinking like 50,000 personally.
Gotcha.
No, that's a lot more.
If you had to guess, what do you think it is?
I would say 75 to 1,000 or to 100,000. I think it's like super big, actually, just when you think about consultants, tech adjacent, even like when you think about like hospitality, but then they have a tech department, right? So it's like all these nuances when you think about people in tech.
Nice. Kylan, what about you?
Yeah, I think Kelly got it on the nail. I think like around 75,000, 100. I think, that kind of different mix up of different folks in corporations that have these different roles that don't just fit into engineering and development make up a huge part of the community. And through all these events that happen through the Black Tech ecosystem, you get to see a great concentration of these folks. And so definitely looking forward to meeting more of these people.
Yeah.
Joey, real quick, I'll add, the one thing that we don't want to forget is that a lot of people have chosen Atlanta as a place to live, even if their job doesn't sit here. So they may have a job with Google, or they may have a job with a company, but they're working fully remote, but they live in Atlanta. So the seat of their job may be in DC, but they're working out of Atlanta as well. And that's a whole nother group of folks that we don't tend to count because we don't see them in the office necessarily every day or at certain events and activities. But they're very much here, or they moved to the Atlanta metro area for the sake of living in Atlanta, all the wonderful things that Atlanta has to offer as a place to live. So that's another reason I thought the number was double, because I'm just thinking about all the folks who are sitting in their living rooms or their offices at home, and their job is, somewhere else or based somewhere else in the country. So
yeah, that's me.
That's one.
Kelly, what about you? Do you have a thought there? I said you take it.
Oh, I was just saying +1 to what Justin said.
Nice. So here's the opportunity, right? So let's say 75,000 to 100,000 people are here. I know there have been some efforts, like with the Chamber, Metro Atlanta Chamber. They were bringing together leaders of some of the DEI roles in the city. Also, I believe there's an effort to bring together ERGs, particularly around diverse and Black ERG leaders and creating relationships that way. So I think the opportunity if you work for a large company and you have a Black group of employees, you should be getting with the leaders of that group and making sure they're plugged in with other ERG leads from across the city as well, right? I mean, it's about relationships, and people are not necessarily trying to poach per se, but at the end of the day, if the ERG leads at least are thinking about if there's like a common set of objectives, and then again, you're gonna have your company specific set. But if as a group, people are like, okay, here's what we want to achieve, I think there's a huge opportunity in making sure people are actually moving toward that. right? Kelly?
Definitely. That's so interesting, especially since these conversations are happening now, especially at Google. We're thinking about having mixers with folks at Twitter and Microsoft and Amazon and Salesforce. We know that it's important to have and build those community and those connections, especially when you're thinking about getting closer to the end of the year, the beginning of the year, and like, what are those opportunities and how can we make sure that our community is thriving? So those conversations are definitely happening, Joey. I'm glad that people are starting to take notice of that. And I know for a previous mixer that was like cross collab, Salesforce led those efforts. So I think to Justin's point, when we continue to lean on organizations' networks, we can like expand it across and go up. So yeah.
Nah, I mean, perfect. I mean, Salesforce, thank you for being a leader, right? I mean, and I think we also have to recognize what's going on with the economy from a job perspective. I think a lot of people, particularly in tech, are being affected. Maybe not as much engineers and developers and stuff, but people are being affected, right? And so, as a community, forget company affiliation for a second and so on and so forth. I think as a community, we got to make sure that our people are taken care of and making sure people got jobs and so on and so forth. I mean, whether they work for someone else or maybe they go and start their own thing, that we'll get into that a little bit later on in this conversation. But we got to take care of us. And as long as people have relationships together, I think it's a dope thing. Like I envision a world, quite honestly, or a Metro Atlanta world where people from Kelly's, like you say, Salesforce, Twitter, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they know each other well to where they're hosting dinners at each other's houses, right? Talking shop, what's going on here locally, what's going on nationally as it relates to tech and so on and so forth. So, we've got to get to that point. I mean, some of us here on the call, we have relationships like that. We can maybe even go to, get a drink. Heck, we may do a drink this afternoon. I don't know if y'all want to make it happen, but we got to get to the point where people are kicking it at each other's houses. So this is like, I mean, it could happen in real life, but you want to develop those type of relationships, and that's how we move forward, as a community. So I don't know if anybody, John, before we kind of start talking about what's going on with engineers and developers, I actually want to get your thoughts around, maybe just stuff around corporate in general, or to see if you have any.
Yeah. So, especially with corporate, the good is that there are a lot of companies that are coming. We have more companies that are coming here, building tech centers here. For example, we have Nike coming here next year in 2023 with their, technology centers. But also what I do see, and this is sort of the, what I would call the slightly negative side about it, is like now it's an arms race. So now everyone is looking for talent,
Right.
and they're starting to outbid each other for talent. So case in point, we've had some people who've come to our events who would go to one company, get an offer, and then another company would reach out for the same role and give them a bigger offer. So, even though we're trying to get, camaraderie between the different corporations, there's a lot of what I call the arms race of who can pay me more to get the talent.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, I don't know if anybody else was seeing this stuff, but I remember especially 2020 and early parts of 2021. Now I focus on more so on startup, right? I focus more, but I'm getting hit up every week like, yo, we're opening up an office. We're opening up an office. Hey, can you send me, your some of your best talent, either like early level or senior level, right? And I'm doing a calculation in my head. I'm like, I don't know if there's enough people to fill all these seats, right? And so what I think about, not as much as Ernest and John is developed. I do think about how we develop that talent, and obviously Kelly as well. How do we develop talent? But what I more so think about is that what does that do to the relationships of the people in these different companies? So, for example, if people are at a dinner together, there's an 8-person dinner, are people like side-eyeing each other like, yo, you trying to steal my people, dog? You know what I'm saying? So when you, I mean, because I gotta eat. I gotta report up to someone usually, and so on and so forth. I don't know. And we gotta do something about it. But
yeah, I actually have a very similar experience. I was at an Amazon mixer, and I was talking about Tech Equity Collective, and one of the, I guess he was a a lead manager for the BEN ERG at Amazon. And he was like, "Are you over here poaching?" And I was like, "No, not at all." I was like, "We're actually out here convening tech industry leaders and companies to join and say that, hey, we're going to actually hire Black people and we're going to make those commitments. So no matter if you're going to Google, Amazon, or Twitter." And so when you talk about the competition, it is real. And I think there's also a sense of how do you have that camaraderie or that community without it feeling like a competition as well, because the better we are, the better our tech ecosystem is.
Yeah. Not Ernest.
No, this is like add on in there. Like when I think about it from connecting the corporations to the students, one thing that we don't do in Codehouse is like, oh, just because this company comes on as a partner, like we're gonna promise you 5 students or 10 students. So I'm never gonna force a student down one pathway or committing to one company. But I do speak with our partners about just having like the way you interact with the students and the way you build that community or that safe space for the students, the more they're going to want to come to your company, right? And like one of our biggest partners is PayPal. You should have seen like how excited we had. I think 10 scholars from our first cohort go and intern at PayPal. And they were just like, it wasn't because we were pushing PayPal so hard or anything like that. It was just because PayPal is showing up in so many different kind of ways. And I think that's actually, Justin, you came and spoke with the scholars this summer, right? Because of our partnership with PayPal, right? And they got to meet so many cool people, but it was because of that community aspect or that environment that they were putting the students in that made them want to go to PayPal, right? So it's all about like the narrative that you want to drive or the perceptions that you want students or talent to have really drives whether they would want to come to your company or not, right? So when you guys are talking about all that, that's like the immediate story that came to my head.
Justin.
Yeah, real quick, just a super quick story that I want to share. So yes, Ernest, I did come and speak, but I want to talk about how important it is to build relationships. So relationships in general. So Shelly Rudd was one of our very first analysts. She's former Techstar. She came on to be one of our analysts. She ended up deciding to go to Columbia for grad school, and she now works at PayPal Ventures. And so one of our LPs is PayPal. So that's how we made our connection. But what's really interesting about this is her role at Techstars and subsequently Collab, and then her decision to continue her career in the venture world. When I get invited to an event, it's Shelby who's inviting me to the event and saying like, "Hey, come speak to the students, et cetera, et cetera." And so it was a very full circle moment. But her level of comfort and being able to approach me and saying like, "Hey, here's our objectives. Here are the things that we want to do. It's good for it was an easy yes for me. I didn't even have to like really think about it, and it almost didn't matter what we were talking about. Obviously, the subject, it was something I'm familiar with, but it just goes to show, Joey, to your point around being intentional with those relationships, like how we later connect. You never know. And so it's important to create those environments. So now I'm thinking, Ernest, to your point, I'm thinking about how can we do more with PayPal, because I know they're willing to show up and I know they hire great people, because I don't know, I want Shelly to come back, but that's a whole nother conversation. I'm happy to see her there and know that and proud to be a part of her journey to getting there, but also knowing from an Atlanta perspective, we have somebody at PayPal who's thinking about our talent, who's thinking about our students, who's thinking about our ecosystem. Even if it's a footnote in her notes, it's on the paper. Whereas historically, that hasn't necessarily always been the case. We've always been wondering, is there anyone looking out for us? Well, in this case, we know there's somebody. We have an ally there, both as a corporation, but also on the individual level. So it just goes to show that I just want to tell that quick story, just to show context and how important it is to have these relationships. And so to your point, Joy, can we go to a Falcons game, or can we go have a drink, or just have brunch one day to continue to build that rapport? And I would say the last thing is, think about the corporations. How do we be collaborative in the macro, right? Because that's the community impact piece, and remain competitive in the micro. Like, everybody's selling SaaS and software and solutions, but like just thinking a lot about how we think about or just approach those discussions to ensure that we're having collaboration is to think about like we're collaborative because the impact that we have is on Atlanta, which continues to keep it on the top of lists where people want to live. And as long as that's the case, then there'll be plenty of talent to come and fill in some of those gaps. So there has to be collaboration there in order to drive talent into all the right places for everybody.
Nice.
startups and the like. So, yep.
So I'm gonna go to Kylan next, and then I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper into to John's work and development of talent and so on and so forth. Before I go to Kylan, I feel like in LinkedIn people are trying to organize actual happy hour. I see Marcel's and Kelly doing stuff. I mean, are y'all actually trying to make this thing happen? Keep on posting comments, and maybe we're gonna do an impromptu meetup after this. But Kylan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I also have a background in corporate as well. I actually worked for Accenture for 3 years in growth and business design consulting. And one of the things I'll say is one of the things we don't need to undercount, and why, building these rapport and relationships are so important, is because we now more than ever have so many folks who are executives, middle managers, senior managers, people who are in decision-making seats that look like us now. And so it's super important to leverage that, overall impact that we can make. And so I think that's another thing to be mindful of, and then also create opportunities for folks who are ready to make that senior manager, executive level kind of role, to help them develop themselves and help them be able to get the resources that they need to be successful in these different opportunities.
There it is. Cool. Okay. And I see there's some organization around some type of happy hour. Y'all gonna have to let us know the time and location. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Okay, so let's kick it over to John. John, I mean, let's go a little bit into some of the work that you're doing. You're on the ground there developing, my understanding, talent of people a little bit older, like post college and things of that nature. Can you quickly share a little bit more about your work?
Yes, definitely. So besides what I call the career switchers, folks who are switching from non-traditional tech roles to tech roles, we also work with a lot of boot camp grads. So for techs of color, I think our biggest boom, I call it, happened around 2016. I call it the boot camp, craze, where all these boot camps from all over, all these other places were coming down to Atlanta saying, hey, in 3 months, I can make you an engineer. And we all know the fact that after 3 months, there's no way you could be an engineer after 3 months. And so that sort of spearheaded some of the work that we were doing with working with individuals, filling in the gaps of, yeah, React and JavaScript, but how do you get that job? And another thing that we focus on besides community is we focus also on networking, right? Networking, making new connections, and besides, improving your career, also making those additional connections. Um, I, I have a story to share that is kind of interesting. So before the pandemic happened I think it was 2018, 2019, I was working for a company. I went out to this conference and I met some folks from MailChimp. We were just sitting there, just collaborating, conversating. And one of the folks on that team said, it'd be kind of cool if you work for us one day. That was all that was said. Fast forward, the pandemic happened. The company that I worked for laid off 40% of the employees. I was unfortunately one of the ones that was cut. Took a month off, to evaluate what I want to do next. And guess who came calling? MailChimp. So that connection that I made a couple years ago came up and said, hey, I saw on your LinkedIn that you're looking. Had a conversation, went to interviews, got a role working as a senior data analyst at MailChimp. So one of the things that we emphasize with the folks that come to our events is creating those partnerships, networking, meeting new people who work in different places, because you never know, that person that you meet at this event could help you elevate your career somewhere down the line.
Nice. So you alluded to earlier, I'm going to call it the mean game of musical chairs,
Right.
honestly. But yeah, I mean, are there any things you're really excited about in terms of developing talent? And then I do want to ask after that, any concerns you have, but anything, what's exciting for you right now, the work you are doing?
So what I'm excited about is, the group of people who are coming to our events, who are, getting those opportunities. So for example, we went back live in June. We went back to in-person events in June because we tried the whole virtual event. And, I'm not saying it was bad at all. It was great, but I had a lot of Zoom fatigue. And so we went back live and we started seeing a new crop of, new faces coming into the tech scene, folks graduated from different boot camps. And for us, what makes us excited is we're seeing people come in, getting information, leveling up on their skills and landing jobs. That's what I'm excited about, is folks coming in, meeting people and getting jobs. And so that's what, drives the work that we do, is seeing people um, work for these companies. And I have to say, for us, one of the beautiful things for us is we never solicited any of our sponsors. Our sponsors, through word of mouth, heard about the work that we do and approached us. And so that's been one of the things that I've been so proud of, is that we have done no advertising, and people are just coming to us to collaborate and find a way to get good talent. Now, for us on our end, we are very intentional. So I like to say, not all money is good money. So, we always want to make sure that the companies who come to us, who converse with us, who, want to get to know the people who come to our events, have very good intentions. So that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about, is making sure that, you say that you want black talent, but what is it like working in your place of business? And so being able to make sure that we do a good job of protecting our people in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I'm excited about is, how Atlanta is the home base for some engineering developer conferences and stuff like that. I mean, and those, they're not necessarily, well, some maybe are, but some of them are not necessarily exclusively focused on Black people. They're led by Black people here in Atlanta. So you see Refactor Tech with Erica Stanley, you see Render ATL with Justin Samuels and a few others. And so these are bringing people from all over the country, quite honestly. And it's using Atlanta. I mean, we're here. Atlanta is like a home base for a lot of these things. So we talk about the phrase Atlanta influences everything. And I'll say this. I was at an event about a month and change ago, and this goes into recent transplants, was a different conversation, or maybe we can get to a little bit later on. People had not heard about Atlanta influences everything. So if you're watching this right now, just Google Atlanta influences everything. Atlanta influences the world. Do not be a part of Atlanta Black tech community and say that you have never heard of Atlanta influences everything. I'm just going to say that right now. Boom. Okay. But any other, events, conferences, things of that nature that you all are aware of, excited about? I don't know, Ernest or, Kelly, Justin, and Kyle, anybody else? Things happening?
Yeah, in the community here in the Startup Atlanta community, there's a huge kind of month coming up, actually. We have Innovation Month, and so there's going to be tons of different programming from Venture Atlanta to, we have Startup Atlanta, the Atlanta Startup Awards coming up on the 12th. And there are tons of other really great opportunities to plug into the startup community. And so definitely look, through different, we have an actual website, startupatlanta.com/events. We have a ton of these different events that are set to happen in October already hosted, but that's just one great way to plug into the tech community. And I'm looking forward to the other really great opportunities that will be happening over the next year, because it sounds like there's tons of investment and money going into, thinking about how they can show up. And, Atlanta just recently got named the best place to live. So I don't only see that, being a big factor in folks deciding to come here and, make their stake here.
And I'm sure the work that we all are doing help that rap. I got no proof in terms of what places, but I'm sure it played a role.
Hey, I got an Atlanta magazine with you in it, so definitely I got my proof.
There's proof.
There it is. Anybody, any other things, or any organizations we're missing out, on the tech, talent side and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, selfishly, I'll just bring up, like, my team is gearing up for our next Tech Exposure Day event. Tech Exposure Day is actually how we started CodeHouse, just to expose middle and high school students of color to tech industry, exposing them to all the great companies and organizations that we've been talking about. So we'll have information on our website pretty soon. If there are any educators that want to bring students to that event, it should be early 2023. So we're gearing up for.
There it is. Justin?
Yeah. Go ahead, Kelly.
Okay. I was going to do a shameless plug from a Google perspective. We do have DevFest happening. It's virtual, in person. It's a Google Developer Conference that's starting in September. It's going through December. We also have our Google Cloud Next, and that's also if you're a Google developer in the cloud space. So that's happening October 11th through the 13th.
There it is. Justin.
Yeah, broadly, I'm really excited for all the things. I would say, shameless plug, collab. We sit in a point of leadership with Black VC, which is an organization designed to galvanize and organize all the Black-led funds and firms and those that want to participate on the other side of the table, as they say. So really excited about what we're going to be rolling out early next year. Obviously, participating this fall in Atlanta Innovation Month, and the other thing that I'm really excited about, Joey, to your point around Atlanta influences everything, we're really starting to see the halo as well. So we're starting to have conversations with folks in neighboring communities like Birmingham and Charlotte, and they want a little bit of the sauce. So they're asking us to come and participate and help them get to where we were, 5 years ago, and that is galvanizing community, bringing resources, and bringing some of the best Atlanta has to offer. So I just look forward to all the things that are not yet announced, but are rumbling, circling the wagon, so to speak. And so there'll be more, even more in this broader ecosystem that I think we can tap into. So I look forward to those things. Apple is an investor in our fund, so I look forward to the Propel Center and seeing what that can do from a convening standpoint, but then also just, again, the halo effect of having places where we can collaborate and teach and upskill and stuff like that. So lots of things going on, but those are some of my thoughts.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, so I wanted to plug in another conference. So there's Connect Tech, which is happening here in Atlanta. And shameless plug, but if you want to get a chance to win a free ticket to the conference, you can just go to our Instagram page. We got a post. You got a couple of instructions to follow for a chance to get a free ticket to the Connect Tech conference.
What is the Instagram?
Our Instagram is @TechsOfColor, and that's TECHSOFCOLOR, Techs of Color.
Nice. So I was gonna give a shout out to Propel Center. I know Lovosky Brown, and hopefully I pronounced that name correctly, my man. Asked around esports. So you think about community led by Ryan Johnson. That's community with CX community, essentially. I mean, they're doing amazing things. To my understanding, I mean, the way I look at it, what Ernest is doing for software development in terms of HBCUs, they're doing for esports. And so you got some of the leading organizations and conferences in the country, maybe even the world, for Black people based here in Atlanta, between Code House, Community, Tech Equity Collective, the conferences like Render and Refactor Tech, and so on and so forth. And so, and then again, this is just on the kind of the development side of tech, right? So of large tech, we're not even talking about the startup stuff. So we talk about Atlanta influence everything. This is just kind of a snippet. So I know we do want to talk about what's going on in the entrepreneurship space, but I do want to spend a few extra minutes talking about a few things. One of the things I think about is lots of attention, and rightfully so, goes to software engineering development. But as we were kind of alluded to earlier, there are other parts of tech, right? So my question is, and maybe I'm just missing it, but what is the Tech of Color? What is the Code House equivalent for design, for product management, for digital marketing, and so on and so forth? Maybe they exist. I focus more so on the entrepreneur side of things, on the startup side. I mean, does it? Like, the first question is, are there equivalents, right? And then if the answer is no, why not? And I'll kick it to, I don't know, Kelly, John.
Yeah. I have some thoughts around it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know when it comes to like tech adjacent positions, there's a lot of certifications out right now. A lot of companies have like these universities or training programs that equip people who want to get into tech or tech aspiring to have those skill sets or up level them. I haven't seen like a huge community when it comes to like, if you want to get to a specific like product management or product management. But what I do see is like a lot of companies are creating these certifications and saying, hey, if you complete the certification, then you'll be considered for this type of role or position.
Nice. Anybody else have any thoughts on it? Or are aware of any other organizations and stuff?
Yeah, I can be real quick, Ernest, while you're thinking. They take a short hiatus, but the Hue Collective, which puts on the Hue Design Summit, focuses on getting creatives together, mostly design centric, and that's cross discipline. So it's not just not just UI, UX, and it's also architecture, city planning and design. I sit on the board over there, and I'm looking forward to them rebooting and refreshing some things. So that's one organization that comes to mind. But they need more resources and more collaboration to get more folks to attend. They were in an in-person event, virtual to your point before. The Zoom fatigue wears on people, especially people who are super creative. They need to be around energy. They need to see faces and give high fives in person. So learning to navigate that has been a challenge. But I think, going into next year, we're going to look at getting back to the roots of how do we bring people together safely, of course, but to collaborate and upskill and learn from one another. So Hugh is one that comes to mind.
Nice. Enjoy Garen dropped over in LinkedIn about the Atlanta chapter, the Black Product Managers Organization. So, which is an amazing organization as well. So that's good. I don't know anybody have any other thoughts on it or okay. What I would say is, and I know Justin, you said Hugh Collective is maybe taking a break. I'm glad to see the Black Product Managers Association or chapter or organization, excuse me, Atlanta chapter is up and doing well. And this is also, let me just say this too. We don't necessarily, I don't believe that there needs to be a Black version of every single group. Sometimes people can join an overarching group of designers and so on and so forth. But there does in my opinion, needs to be a person or persons responsible for making sure that community is built out and people are getting in, and again, they're improving and so on and so forth. Sometimes these efforts are formal, sometimes these efforts are informal. And I don't think that our overall Atlanta Black tech community can reach its potential until there are kind of leads and efforts, again, whether it's formal or informal in some of these sub communities and talent areas. So again, if we want to take stock of what's going on in the community, there are some areas that we seem to be doing pretty well, like engineering development. Not to say there's not room for improvement, but there's some areas that maybe aren't getting the attention that they need and deserve. So if you're out there watching leadership opportunities, someone step up and do your thing. Anybody have any thoughts before we kind of move on to the next part, Ernest?
Well, I was just thinking about just like the magic of Atlanta still, and how we influence everything. But like recently, Google even just announced another big grant for organizations like CoPath, Michael, and the Hidden Genius Project. And I actually recently talked to both of them in the last few weeks, because they're like, with that grant, they're actually expanding to Atlanta. So it just like goes to show like how even organizations who are doing their thing in a big way outside of Atlanta are now coming to have the same kind of influence. And I did want to follow up on your point, Joey. That's why I unmuted earlier. It's like, I'm so big about collective impact. Like most of us, I would say, are striving for the same goal to really support and better our community, the Black community, right? So the more that we can collaborate, the more that we can work together to solve some of these problems, I think the better. So like, just like you said, I don't know if we need a lot more new organizations unless they they're truly solving like a new problem. But like, if Kodos could ever be a helping arm with anyone else out there doing some similar work, definitely want to make sure I extend that olive branch for sure.
There it is. We have a question from LinkedIn on the cloud computing front. Are there any organizations that are focused on developing those in cloud? I don't know, John or Ernest or Kelly or really anybody.
Yeah, I know there's 2 chapters here in Atlanta with the Grow developer groups at Google. I know that there's also a makerspace for developers and engineers called Kit Labs. So I believe those might be good places to start.
Nice. Cool. Good stuff. Okay. Great questions. Great questions here. Also, there's apparently Google's conference scholarship for Black women in tech, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so there's a lot of stuff going on. So we're coming up on the end of we're past the end of our first hour. Let's shift the conversation now to entrepreneurship, right? And I think there's a clear line. So if you think about the pathway someone in tech, again, this is not linear, but K-12, maybe you go to college or something of that effect, and you learn about engineering, design, product management, digital marketing, yada, yada, yada. Again, this path is not linear, but it could be, this could be a linear pathway. You go work for Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Twitter, Salesforce, yada, yada, yada. You gain connections, you gain great experience, you get some money in your pocket, and then you may do a few things. You could, one, if you're still working one of these big tech companies, you could become an investor, an angel investor, or you can leave and do your own thing, right? You can start your own company, your own startup. So let's talk about the founder pathway first before we get into the investor pathway. Let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the Atlanta startup community as it relates to Black tech founders. Right. I can remember. So my startup, as it relates to software, 07, 08 here in Atlanta, it was a handful of us, literally one hand. Over the years, that number has grown and grown and grown. I do feel like even within Goody Nation, I think we have about 162 founders from Atlanta, and just in our program, 90%, 95% of them are Black, right? So Colin, I actually start with you. What are your thoughts around the Black tech startup founder, what's going on with Black tech startup founders here in the city?
Yeah, I think, it's really interesting to see entrepreneurship. It has so many different faces. And it's really important, I think, to reach folks at a very young age and expose them. So yeah, getting this experience at these companies gives you the experience that you need, sometimes connections that you need, money in your pocket. But a lot of the times it exposes you to what's possible and how kind of easy it can be once you have the right resources to do it. And so constantly being able to provide these opportunities for younger students and young folks who might have these entrepreneurial minds to get this exposure to different career pathways and things that they can do is super important. Over the last year, I've been working with Morehouse as well and been helping stand up our Launchpad at Morehouse. Which is our first dedicated student entrepreneurship program focused on helping develop our young innovative minds with skill sets that they can use to innovate not only on their own companies, but within other companies if they decide to do so. And in that, it's really great to see how many of our students at Morehouse are actually focused on tech right now. We went from having 8 fellows last year to 20 fellows this year, and it's been incredible to see how many folks have been really wrapping their heads around problems that are enabled by technology. And so now I think a lot of the challenge is making sure that not only do we have realistic expectations of what we're able to achieve with technology, but then also making sure that we remain creative. Because I think a lot of the times we kind of get limited to only what we know. And I think one of the gifts that we have in our community is innovation and being creative and taking something that we get and making it better just based off of our experience. And so I think that's one of the things that we need to cultivate within that younger community.
Nah. I mean, that's an amazing example of the growth. I mean, if I had to put the number of startup founders that are Black in Metro Atlanta, it's probably 400 to 500 range. I mean, this is not a knock on them, but just in general, it never has it been easier to launch a startup. But also what we know is that Black people in general are super creative and hustle ain't an issue with us, right? So desire and creativity is not an issue. So we're seeing people spin up stuff like never before, right? Justin, I want to go to you. What are some of your thoughts on the founder side of it?
Yeah, I would agree. I think the numbers double easily. Think about all the folks that are in the garage quiet, so to speak, in the dorm rooms and in their apartments and homes or tinkering on the weekends. So I think the numbers probably easily double. One of the things that really stands out is we're starting to see more and more fragmentation of what it means to be a founder, right? So, once upon a time when it was much smaller, Joey, and like you said, it was just a couple handfuls, pretty much everybody was working on what we would consider to be deep tech or really, really hard stuff. So everything from computer vision to things that require electrical parts and engineering things that true, real hard engineering things. And then we started to see the space evolve into kind of this SaaS fintech mecca where we're starting to see a lot more software engineering and more skills, skills-based stuff, different types of skills. And now we're starting to see, to your point, Joey, as these worlds start to collide with other spaces like the creative space, we're starting to see the idea of founder and starting to see delineation between what a founder, a CEO, an operator, like those things I think are starting to play a larger role. And so what we have to do, and not to get too deep into this, I'm sure it's part of the conversation, is figure out how to make sure people are in the right spots. Because I think that's because there's so many resources coming into the city or already here and present, lots of great organizations like a Goody Nation. You want to make sure that if I'm building a tech-enabled business, right, where we use technology to maybe help with marketing or the proliferation of our product, that's different than going into, say, like research at maybe Georgia Tech. So we want to make sure that folks are going in the right spots for their ventures, but then also make sure that we are delineating and clearly helping to define what it means to be a founder and how that may be different than the CEO, which may be also different than employee number one, and just making sure that people understand what it means and where they fit within the ecosystem, not to try to limit people, but to just make sure that they have they're coming into the ecosystem at the right entry point so that they are well resourced, as opposed to what we're seeing now is a gross misalignment. Like the capital markets aren't keeping up with where founders are starting businesses. As an example, we have a lot of consumer brands, and we still have work to do there to make sure that it's the right resource when it comes to capitalizing and the right programs are available for those types of businesses. The same way with tech-enabled smaller businesses, right? So as Main Street looks to continue to digitize and bridge that digital divide, do they have access to the right resources? Or are they showing up for things that are maybe kind of outside of the scope or creating misalignment, and that's creating confusion? And that kind of spirit can proliferate quickly through an ecosystem where people feel like, oh, I went to Atlanta, I moved to Atlanta, but there was nothing there for me. Your tribe is here. The question is, are you being welcomed into that tribe appropriately? And are you aligning yourself with the right resources so that you can have the greatest likelihood of being successful and maximizing the potential of your business and your career in entrepreneurship, whatever it may be. So I think that's a key point. And so with that influx, I think we're seeing greater fragmentation, and that fragmentation is good because it shows variety, but it also it presents some new challenges. And I look forward to tackling some of those, but that's what I'm seeing in the space right now.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I mean, if you talk about even going from software to, e-commerce and also tech enabled and stuff like that. I mean, it explodes up to the thousands. It explodes up to the thousands. I think that there is some things that I'm at a point in my life where a few things. One, I just talk in stories. And then two, I just have this experience where I unfortunately I see the end of the entrepreneurship journey when I first meet someone. And just generally speaking, most entrepreneurs will not be successful. It's just the numbers bear that out, right? So I try to figure out how can we increase the likelihood of people reaching even a small level of success. Which in some cases makes me somewhat of a hater, which I don't like. But I also try to not, see people's dreams completely crushed. And again, give them some or help them at least realize some of their potential. But I do think there's an amazing opportunity in Atlanta for us to kind of drive literally Black entrepreneurship nationwide, if not globally, right? If not globally. And so it's like the big opportunity for us, to Justin's point, is to make it super inclusive, get people from the creator economy into tech. Like, I don't think people in the creator economy can consider themselves part of the tech community, and which is huge in Atlanta. And if we can make inroads there, it's only going to explode for a number of different reasons. So, Justin, do you have another thought?
I'll be real quick. It's a quick statement, but not a quick conversation. The big thing, Joey, too, is some founders aren't failing fast enough. So you're not a hater. Startups are experiment. We got to get out here. We got to try things. We pivot if we have the time and the resources to do so. If it don't work, move on. And the reason we need to move on, Joey, and you and I had a conversation about this before, is you don't know what's on the other side of making that decision to say, you know what, that didn't work. Let me take a break. Let me help out the ecosystem in the broad sense. Maybe get a job, maybe put somebody in a good place. If I had team, place them in good companies and corporations, that kind of thing. But also get to the next problem. If you're an entrepreneur, it's gonna the bug is gonna bite you again. It's in your blood. So, but you got to let go. And so sometimes I know that's difficult, and there's a lot of ego bound to that, and a lot of purpose sometimes attached to these things. And there is some grieving that will happen. Trust me, I know. But I think as we see more and more startups and these numbers increases, we need to see some of these companies merge. We need to see some things close so that they can go and move on to the next thing, which statistically speaking increases the likelihood of them being successful. So if you hold on to something 2 years too long, 3 years too long, what are you keeping yourself from? What are you keeping others from a success perspective? So I just wanted to share that.
Nice. Kelly?
Yeah, no, Justin, you touched on an incredible point about merger and acquisitions when we think about these companies, and how when you actually do merge, you're showing not only from the outside looking in, but there's value there, right? I think we had the Gathering Spot in Greenwood that just did that huge merger in the city of Atlanta, and it shows on the outside into other countries, into other states that, hey, they're doing something here in Atlanta. You know, Black-owned organizations, Black-owned companies are growing at extraordinary rates. And I'll also put this plug in there as well. The number one growth right now for entrepreneurs is Black women. So I think if we can support these communities and how we can grow them, and not only support with finances, but like Justin said, with the networks, with the exposure, it can only do more to broaden our community and reach not only Atlanta, but like your Norfolk, Virginias, or your Charlotte, North Carolinas, and just to keep expanding. So,
no, so a few things. One, I want to double down on, Kelly, what you said around the point around Black women. I'm concerned about a number of things in Atlanta, particularly like Black tech in Atlanta, but I'm concerned about overall in Atlanta, the lack of support for women entrepreneurs and women startup founders across the board, no matter what you look like. A number of organizations have unfortunately gone out of business that supported them. And so I'm extremely concerned about the lack of support for women entrepreneurs, women startup founders. But then we start talking about Black women startup founders, my concern grows a lot more, right? So we've got to develop some organizations and groups that can support Black women startup founders, really that's focused on the unique problems that they experience in the startup community.
Yeah, and I think Atlanta's doing a good job, with the Women Entrepreneurship Initiative that the city of Atlanta has founded. You have the Fearless Fund that Ariane takes leads on, and she's based out in Detroit, but she definitely has a huge representation here in Atlanta. And then you have Women in Technology that's here as well in Atlanta. But to your point, when it comes to capital, I believe Black women get less than 1% of all venture capital out there. The number's increasing, we're taking up more of the market, but it's very slow growth. So I think any allies and support would be needed and helpful.
Yeah, for certain. I think, going back to Justin's point on overarching point, I think there's room for consolidation there. I think there's also some spaces. And here's also where the interesting intersection or tie between corporate tech and startup goes. And again, there's a number of ties in my opinion. What I see in many cases in dealing with founders, and I work with them on a daily basis, is when you ask them their origin story and then the problem that they are focused on, in many cases, there's a misalignment there. So you may work for, and again, I'm making these companies up, Google, Amazon, so on and so forth, Microsoft, for 10 years in, I don't know, cloud. I'm making all this stuff up. And then they go and start a company in something completely different. So you have this domain experience in cloud, but then you go and start something totally different. There's not enough time for us to go into, some of the ramifications around that. But I think there's an opportunity for founders, particularly Black tech founders in Atlanta, to take their experience from all the companies they work for and then translate that into an opportunity for them to develop a company. Now, again, there's to unpack why people are doing or focus on a problem that's different than their work experience is a totally different thing. It goes back to centuries of shit we've had to deal with, so to speak. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there's an opportunity for us to align it to create a better success pathway for those founders. So for example, what I see, and maybe Justin and Kylan and others are seeing, there's a lot of Black founders in Atlanta, but also nationwide, that are clustered in a few spaces. So like DEI tech, rightfully so, mental health tech, especially after George Floyd, rightfully so, health in some areas, education. And at some point, there's so many, they can't be successful. They can't be successful. So Justin alluded to this earlier. At some point, there's an opportunity for some of these folks to come together, because at the end of the day, you can't have 20 companies focused on mental health, like the same problem in mental health, It will never work out. And so my opinion, at least, is that, and I think others have backed it up, and maybe Justin, if you can expound on this a little bit too, you can take these amazingly talented people who have desire, who have hustle, who have grit and stuff like that. And if they can maybe combine efforts, we'll solve the problems faster. So, I mean, I'm speaking about this because this is a hot button topic for me, because I see it every day. And I know that, okay, 20 people focus on DEI tech in Atlanta. Maybe one of y'all gonna win, maybe two, not all 20. And if y'all Voltron up, I don't know if anybody else remembers Voltron. If y'all Voltron up, you know what I'm saying? I think we can do some good stuff. So anybody have any thoughts on that?
I have thoughts, but Kelly, you can go ahead.
Oh, I was just asking a clarifying point. So are we saying, Joey, that you're seeing just if you have a concentration of a focus on one area spread across multiple companies, we're looking at that as like a redundancy, or we're saying, hey, how do we build a collective around it? Okay.
Yeah,
So,
redundancy. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I have a ton of thoughts on this. I've actually written about it in a different way, Joey. I wrote a piece that I shared on Medium, just some thoughts, and it was around like, what if you gave everybody the same size, like found 3 companies working on the same thing, gave them the same size check, same resources, same intros, and just see who wins, right? It was a crazy like idea, but it's to your point, Joey, is that there are well, because we tend to start companies based out of our own experiences. Unfortunately, we all collectively have we've gone through a pandemic together. You know, we saw the instance in the uprising with post George Floyd. We see all the things. We saw the COVID slide in education. So we're seeing young people get behind or further behind in the. So we want to, because we're natural problem solvers, we want to jump into action and solve problems maybe for ourselves or our neighbors, our community, our families. And then what happens is, we used to have Joey, I don't know if you remember the mantra, like no new nonprofits, right? It's the same thing, right? We're having so many people that are passionate about, helping to curb these things, but they don't even know about each other. And we know that because I'm looking at decks and literally like same problem or like so close, and like they're not, the other startups aren't on their competitor slide. And I know that. So to your point, I'm like, man, I have to start checking my ethical check box. Like, do I just intro them to, to one another and be like, go figure this out and come back? Because I think because what it does create in the environment is it creates a little bit of analysis paralysis for me. Now you're asking me to pick a winner, and that's tough. Like, and that's my job. And so I don't mind doing it, but it's tough if I built rapport with Kelly and I built rapport with John, they're working on the same things. At some point, I may say yes to one, but I may say yes to neither, just because I don't want to like disappoint, or does Kelly wonder if I do fund John, is she gonna think that I took the thing she told me and told him, or vice versa? Like it can become conflict. It can create conflict to the point where it's just like, you know what? I have resources. I'm just going to invest in something else. So now that problem is still under-resourced. It's still, the progress is still slow. So actually we need consolidation. And this is me selfishly saying, we need it so that it makes some of these decisions a little bit easier. And we can actually, I think Kelly, you brought up this point earlier, show in the macro that we're willing to collaborate, which means you have to set aside the ego. You got to kill the ego and stop focusing on me winning and saying by solving the problem, we're collectively winning. And that's the mindset that has to be installed in order for us to really see some of these things happen. Right.
I mean, and to tie it back into the earlier point, again, we are, I feel like the development of software engineering development talent is probably there are efforts around that here in Atlanta. But if we can, again, develop talent in the other roles, eventually some of these folks may go off and do their own thing. And if they can leverage that experience, they're going to be working on different problems. hopefully we don't see as much, concentration in some of these spaces. So again, you'll start to see the efforts. If efforts are spun up, you start to see the dividends pay off in 1 or 2 to 3, 4 to 5 years, right? But we got to build these efforts now. So we don't have too much more time left in this broadcast. I want to shift the part on the startup conversation now to the investor, what's going on with Black investors in the city. Justin, I actually want to start with you, because at the end of the day, Black founders in Atlanta are going to say, well, I need capital to launch my company, which is absolutely true. I feel like if I go to Black investors, I have a much better chance of getting money. Then the question is, are there enough Black investors in Atlanta? Again, there's a tie-in from corporate, because you have different types of investors. You have angel investors all the way up to various stages of investors. And in many cases, I feel if you're working for Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Twitter, Salesforce, especially if you're an engineer, you're probably making enough money to qualify to be an angel investor, or you're on the pathway to becoming or an accredited investor, relatively soon. So Justin, your thoughts on what's going on with Black investors in Metro Atlanta?
We need more. I'm going on mute. No, I'm kidding. I will say that, yes, we need greater collaboration, particularly in the earliest stages, and we need more intentionality around. And I'm saying this because I try my best to practice it. It doesn't matter if I talk to a founder from a tech-enabled, high-growth startup and anything in between, or even students. Like I do a lot of guest speaking and guest lecturing at Morehouse. When I talk to them, and what I try my best to do is, again, going back to a previous point that I made, is try to make sure that they are seeking the right type of capital for their business. And venture capital it has a particular design. It can be altered, but it's going to take time. In the meantime, your business still doesn't have capital because you're pursuing the wrong relationships at the particular stage that you're in. And so I tried my best to encourage that anybody who's in a position to write a check, don't just say no because it's not a good fit it doesn't fit portfolio construction, but also be intentional about saying, here is your investment strategy, right? You should look at people who understand your industry or space to look for some small angel checks, 25K, 50K, sometimes smaller, because they not only do they have, some cash that can help you continue your journey, but they have the networks that you're going to need regardless. And so starting, I think about Tally and Twine as an example. So just as a quick example, they make premium to luxury watches, amazing company, know the founders well. One of my things to them as they were preparing for fundraise, I was like, who are you talking to? And how's it been going when you talk to VCs? And they're like, VCs aren't investing in this stuff. I'm like, yes, because the data suggests in order to build a great consumer brand, it takes 20 years, right? Like we know that as a fact. Like the data suggests that it takes 12 to 15 years, or more. Well, here's the thing about VC, we live on 10-year cycles. So if our fund structures are, and the vast majority of them are organized this way, even if we were to invest in you in the very first year of deploying capital, the likelihood of you achieving an outcome sizable enough to fit our needs is well beyond our fund's life, which is 10 to 12 years. So it doesn't mean you're not building a great company. It just means that the mechanics of my business don't match very well with the mechanics of your business. So what you're better to do is figure out who can play the long game, and then 2, how can you accelerate that through networks? And then that's who you should talk to about your problems. That's who you should talk to about raising additional capital, because people who like luxury watches or wear them, they're probably a much better. And these are things I've all said to Eric, so I'm not putting him on Front Street or anything like that. But these are the types of conversations that we need to have to ensure that the resources are aligning well with the founders. And again, that's fragmenting. So we need more angels investing in CPG. We need more angels investing in cloud. We need more, we need these folks to not just operate in these spaces, but turn around and say, oh, that's a startup. I know that space. I can bring expertise, and let me write them a 15K check so that I can get in on their cap table and blah, blah, blah. So we need all of those things at every level. And I would say across every business category or type.
Nice. Kelly, do you have a thought on it?
I did. So interestingly enough, Tech Equity Collective, we actually invested money into an angel investment school that was started by Googlers. And it was a 4-week program that actually taught Black Googlers how to invest. And it was led by Andy Am. He was of Backstage Capital in Europe. So it was like a US/Europe based program. We did like 2 different cohorts. And so I know a lot of people were like, hey, yeah, I want to back up businesses and startups and, pour into my community. But until you kind of have that foundational knowledge, like I think that would help educate these decisions a little bit more. And so I think organizations can create like these, it's called not entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs. So that's kind of like what we did with the Angel Investment School that kind of helped continue on these businesses that are trying to thrive here from that startup and investment perspective.
No, I think that's an amazing example, right, of being intentional. And I think that's an opportunity for those that work in large companies to do something similar. I mean, maybe it's not a large investment, but at the end of the day, if there are ways for employees to learn how to invest and stuff like that, I'm trying to be intentional that sometimes the efforts don't have to be internal. Maybe you can connect with an external organization here in Atlanta for it. But I mean, the intentionality has to happen because, again, to Justin's point, the better we develop angel investors, particularly around CPG, which we see a lot of those entrepreneurs here in Atlanta, particularly around those that can invest in tech-enabled small business. I mean, that's how we win as a community. People start talking about the large, creating the next unicorn and Calendly and stuff like that, and all that's amazing. But those are the exception to the exception to the exception to the rule, right? How do we take care of the people, the other 90%, not even the 10% that get into Hippopotamus or the AJC or Fast Company or Forbes? Like, taking care of the other 90% is how we win. And providing capital to them is critical there. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts. I'm going to go to Kylan. You want to?
Yeah. I love that point that you made too, because I think one of the other things that we just need to constantly be aware of are just the overall barriers that as Black founders we still have. And so I think, one of the conversations that I hear is, a lot of Black founders don't have a friends and family around. And so there's a lot of opportunity for the community to come together to fill that gap. And through different vehicles, like whether it be crowdfunding or direct investment, I see there's this huge emergence in Black folks, specifically in personal finance, interested in investing, whether it be in cryptocurrency, stocks. I think there's an opportunity to make people more aware of the opportunity to invest in companies that look like us, and then also become owners of those companies and build wealth that way as well.
I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a few other people in chat that have drop some comments. So I believe it's Shantae Lena, I believe. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly, over on YouTube, talking about opportunities to leverage crowdfunding and DAOs to help fund founders. Again, what does a community look like for that in Atlanta, right? What I'll also say is there's another question as it relates from Joe Kaufman here over on LinkedIn. And I'll try to put it back up on the screen. It was basically on what can allies do, right? What can allies do, especially if they don't have the money to invest, right? So, my thing is there's a few things you can do. At the end of the day, allies can, what he's saying, like introductions. So if you can't invest, perhaps there's someone in your network that can, right? So getting to know Black founders, establishing trust, and then opening up a network to investors can make a world of difference. Like, warm intros make a world of difference. Now, let's take off the investment cap for a second. In many cases, like advice in areas like product and marketing and PR and hiring and stuff like that make all the difference in the world. At Goody Nation, we're focused on what we call the relationship gap. And so if you're an influential person in tech, even moderately so, opening up your network to other people in tech can lead to higher levels of professional growth. It can lead to access to talent. It can lead to access to customers. All these things help Black founders in particular reach their potential. And we know that in many cases, we've been locked out of these opportunities, these networks, because of history. I'll just kind of leave it at that. So, so that's how allies, those are just some of the ways that allies can support. Yeah, any other kind of final thoughts on the investor piece? There's a few people, like I think it's Denise here with Sweets Capital. I think there's a growing, I know Justin's like there needs to be more, but I do think there is there's a growing number of efforts going on. Justin, can you talk a little bit more about Black VC?
Yeah, I can. I'm definitely not the resident expert. I'm still getting to know the organization myself, but the underlying premise is to bring together funders and founders. You know, it says Black VC, but we really want to make sure that those relationships, Joey, that you mentioned, most people think that we're in the money business, and we're not. We're actually in the relationship business, just like most. We are here to find talent, and believe it or not, most of the folks that we'll fund over the life of over the next 10, 15, 20 years out of Collab Capital, they haven't started anything, or we will likely fund their second or third thing. And so relationships matter, and we're very intentional about, trying to maintain and working to maintain those relationships. And so Black VC is doing similar work. The idea is to catalyze and Joey, galvanize no new nonprofits. But for the ones that are out here, for all the VCs that are out here or aspiring VCs, where are the places and spaces that you can go to collaborate on deals, but more importantly, just build that rapport. Investors don't like investing alone. We like to see that other folks are interested and have a vested interest in seeing the success or the outcomes of these businesses. And so Black VC works to convene and bring people together. And so we're heading up. We started as the Atlanta chapter, but that's expanding just so that we can continue to have that halo effect that I mentioned earlier. But more importantly, bring collaboration across some of these state borders that we need to do so that we can make sure that startups in Birmingham aren't left out of these conversations. Startups in Charlotte, where those ecosystems are much younger, how can we accelerate them? And one way we can accelerate them is by bringing funders in together to say, like, hey, let's go in and let's do these deals together. Let's build these relationships and networks together, so that we have familiar and trusted faces when we go out and actually help entrepreneurs build these companies.
There it is. And Denise Smith says she just got back from the first summit. So there it is. Okay, so let's now shift the conversation. Let's go as we kind of wrap this thing up. There's a few different things I want to talk about next. One is, how do we develop the next generation of leaders in the community in Black tech? Two, I want to get you all's thoughts and you all's on the vision that each of you have for Black tech in Atlanta, and then we'll talk about next steps, right? So I'm kind of focusing on the next generation of leaders. I mean, we talked about how Kylan and Ernest, relatively young cats, graduated from Morehouse 2019. I'll say for the efforts that I began in terms of building community, not only here in Atlanta, but nationwide as it relates to tech and diverse people in tech, started around 2010. 2012, the group that eventually grew into Goody Nation started doing this thing called All Founders Need Therapy. And so group of 20 or so people would meet at a restaurant or a co-working space and complain about about what was going on as the journey of founder over some drinks and food. But that was a start of community. Right? In 2014, the group that would eventually turn into Goody Nation started doing these hackathons for good. And then we connected with Technologies of Color to bring together founders, developers, marketers, designers. And around that time is when I think we started to see the explosion of community here in Atlanta. When you add in more and more people were starting to move to the city around that time. And in 2017, we did the first State of Atlanta Black Tech. But I've been doing this stuff 10, 12 years, right? And one thing about community needs consistent, constant management, attention. And, unfortunately, like Father Time is undefeated in a number of different ways, right? If we want a thriving Atlanta Black tech community in 100 years, when none of us here on this, giving thoughts or watching will be here, unless something changes with innovation, I wouldn't put it past people, especially if they're Black, to make it happen. We have to constantly think about developing the next generation of leaders. Constantly think about, and it has to be intentional. right? Getting people in and helping people understand how to lead, how to set priorities and goals and stuff like that. So I think this part of the conversation can go a number of different ways. Actually, Colin, I'll come to you first. I mean, how do you think about, and I'll go, Ernest, how do you think about, leadership, developing leaders and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's an interesting position because I'm still kind of, in that development space myself and constantly looking for opportunities to build and, sharpen my saw. But I get this compliment, if you will, of like, I wish I could clone you. I wish I could make like 3 other you so I can have, you in my organization. And so a lot of what I've done is embraced, the younger generation, folks who are under me, even folks who are older than me or, just adjacent to me. And share different opportunities and things that I've taken part in. Another thing might come up like, different opportunities that people might want me to fit in, that I can set a recommendation or share a name of someone who I think would be a really good fit in that spot. So I think those are really great opportunities to, make sure that people are getting the development and opportunities they need in this space. But then also in the role that I'm in, I also create a lot of programming and making sure that there are opportunities for this next generation to get involved, whether it be through a fellowship like we're doing with the Launchpad at Morehouse, or we're at Startup Atlanta also starting a fellowship and recruiting for fellows to come support us with entrepreneurial ecosystem building. And so creating these opportunities for them to come in and host events like this and create, materials, marketing assets that help tell the story of what we're doing in this community are really great roles and opportunities for people to plug in and get involved.
Nice. Ernest, you and your sister, right? You all took this mantle, you decided to do it. Again, going back to Colin as well, I think it's somewhat atypical, right? But what was some of your, what's your mindset and what do you, about jumping in such an early age, and you're a leader in this space, and then, how do you think about developing leaders?
Man, there's so many different ways I could go through this, but I would even let you know, like when I was first creating Codehouse with Tavis, who's Morehouse 2020, and my sister's Spelman 16 now, the youngest professor at Spelman College, leading their innovation lab, right? We got a lot of people just looking at us like, no, don't worry about that right now. Go into industry, go be a software engineer, level up, make your money, and focus on that. But I think a lot of the magic behind Codehouse is that the fact that we are young Black professionals, Hispanic young professionals as well, right? And that we can truly connect with the students that we seek to impact and inspire. When we think about the leaders or the future leaders in tech, like they're here, right? These students that we work with, they are, I don't know if I can cuss, Joey, but they're badass. I just want to say, right? And it's not really necessarily developing them into leaders. Of course, professional development and all that definitely helps, but it's more about exposing them to these different pathways to make them know that it's realistic for them to become that senior engineer at Google, to become that startup founder that raised $5 million, right? Like these are realistic pathways that they can start going down. They just need to know that those pathways exist. Yeah. So that's like my Codehouse hat on. From like a corporate standpoint, one thing that I just really love, and I don't even know if I gave you this update, Joey, but I'm on a whole new team now. I'm not a software engineer anymore at Google. I'm a technical program manager on this team called Education Equity. And this is actually the program that runs this program called Google in Residence, where we actually send Google engineers to different campuses, Morehouse being one of them, and they teach the intro to computer science class, right? So when I was a freshman at Morehouse, I was being taught, Kylan and I were both being taught by this engineer, Zach Schneeberger, who was teaching us intro to computer science. Last year, I took the mantle and decided to apply, even though I was 23 at the time, to become that Google in Residence professor and actually teach at Morehouse, and all the freshman and sophomore computer science majors, right? And now, like, because of the way life happens and, being a big advocate for myself and having some great people to invest in me, they brought me onto the team to help, basically train the engineers to become professors at HBCUs. And that's my role right now. I'm like the technical person on the team helping with a bunch of different things. But I bring all that up to say, like, this is one program that it's like a company putting their money and resources and time where their mouth is, right? It's one thing to give HBCUs money. It's another thing to do a bunch of recruiting effort. We're trying to make systemic change within this ecosystem, right? by providing engineers. They still get paid their engineer salary, but they go and become professors impacting these different universities. I got a few weeks ago, short flex, got to go to Puerto Rico for work because that's one of the schools that we work with, University of Puerto Rico. And like the students that we impacted were there. A lot of them now have full-time roles at Google, right? Which they didn't like. They've never been to the continental U.S. before. We took them to the Google headquarters. Like this is for some of them on flights and like staying in a hotel. And it's like truly like life-changing for these students. But that's the kind of impact that I want to start spreading amongst all these different corporate companies. We want to have the impact that we say, or all these companies say that they want to have, right? So I definitely feel just like blessed from the Codehouse perspective, but then also now the Google perspective to be able to work on such impactful things that like I could see firsthand. Like I've seen the joy of like a student getting their internship because we were able to be on campus and having that kind of impact, you know? So TLDR, these students are ready to be leaders. We just need to make sure that we're keeping the doors open for them so that they can step up and rise to the occasion.
There it is, and you probably not seeing this, but over on LinkedIn, so maybe the cursing thing wasn't the best, but there is a teenager now super inspired. I did it too, so it's all good. But he's apparently super inspired over seeing. So I want to kick it over to John next. I mean, John, from Technology to Color, you know, the mantle was passed down recently from Marcellus to you, but again, Father Time is undefeated. I mean, how do you think about developing leaders within this space, or even within your organization?
Sure. So like with, especially within the space in this in this organization, I look for people to have that passion. Like you got to have that passion to do this work. And so, once you identify the folks that have that passion to do this work, is working with them, making yourself available, being a mentor, cultivating them in order to do this work. Because I can tell you doing this work is not easy, right? You sacrifice a lot of time, with family, friends, and a lot of things. And, for me, especially with our organization, is identifying those people that have that interest and show that passion, and then making yourself available to be a mentor to them and to help coach them along the way to create, the next set of community leaders. Because we definitely need it. We definitely have to continue to pour in to the younger generation to uplift them, to inspire them, to continue doing this work.
Nice. Kelly, I want to come to you next. I mean, even with Tech Equity Collective, I mean, you all work with people that run organizations. I mean, again, these are community leaders. So how do you, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I totally plus one to what everyone's saying. I know with Tech Equity Collective, to Ernest, when he called out the Google in residence and how we're at these HBCUs, we're also wanting to spin that when we think about our communities too. So if you don't technically attend a college, but if you can access a college room, or if you can access these spaces, how can we teach computer sciences to the community and broaden our reach when it comes to economic empowerment and getting people into tech? So we're thinking about all these different ways to channel and funnel people into these tech adjacent, tech aspiring, or even the more like the software engineer and hard technical roles as well. I did want to kind of caveat to that. I know when you think about the pipeline of talent going into tech, you also have to think about it from the organizational perspective too. And right now we're seeing a leaky pipeline where once folks get into these organizations, are they being nurtured? Are these organizations creating an environment where they want to retain this talent, where the talent wants to stay? So we're having these conversations ongoing and figuring out ways to mitigate that retention.
Nice. You're absolutely right. That pipeline, that tech pipeline is leaky.
Yeah,
it is leaky. Justin, how do you think about developing the next generation of leaders?
Yeah, I just want to make a super quick point. I don't want us to lose the role or lose the impact the city itself can have. And when we collaborate, it makes it easier for the city to get involved because they see things are already moving. They see organization A, they see Goody Nation working with Google working with leaders at other organizations. It makes it easy for them to get involved because we're then setting the agenda for them, and it actually makes it really, really simple for them to say, okay, this is what the community needs. These are the people, the boots on the ground. Here are the resources. Here are the spaces. Here are the permits. Like here are the laws, the ordinances, like whatever it is. Let's make these things. Let's clear the path so that it can continue to do the good work. Leadership, it comes with sacrifice. Like those things, they're siblings. They unfortunately, I hate the fact that we as Black folks have to sacrifice so much to make this impact. If parity existed, a lot of the conversations we have we wouldn't need them. But we do. So I'm thankful for all the great work and the hours that people spend away from families and stuff like that. I think it's important for us as leaders in this particular entrepreneurial community to continue to encourage folks to find what makes them most happy. And then I would say the number 2 job of an entrepreneur, right? As I say, the first job is don't run out of money. Like, whether, whether it's creating value and getting the customer in, whether it's fundraising. Your second job is finding great talent and putting them in positions and places to excel. Like the next most important job for most startups. And so similarly, from an impact perspective, I think it's incredibly important that we do the same thing. If we're in a position of leadership, if we can cultivate relationships with young founders or young talent, and we see leadership in them, like bringing them under our wing. So, I see a lot of narrative around, how do I ask someone to be a mentor? Well, I think as leaders, we should say, you're going to be my mentor. You're going to be my mentee, excuse me. Like, I want you I see something great in you. I want to nurture whatever it is that you're working on. But again, being strategic thinkers now and being in a position where we can see 5 years, 10 years down the road, it becomes important for us to not just say like, hey, here's a check, I'm going to invest in your business, or here's a grant or a relationship. I also want to make sure that you're close. So I'm actually going to make you a part of some other conversations. I'm going to, put you in this particular seat so that you have some sort of, you are adjacent to me as I continue to move. And so I actually took that spirit, that idea, and that's part of the thesis for our fellowship is we want them closer to the business, not further, so that as they continue to do whatever they're doing in their industry, we're curating, so to speak, folks that we believe could be great ecosystem builders in their respective markets beyond Atlanta, but we do have fellows here in Atlanta. And that comes with great intention. Deja Walker is I think an emerging a VC that she's great. And I think it's important for us to continue to nurture not just that relationship we have with her, but also make sure that she is in the room. She's getting experience and expertise that will help her sharpen her skills, and she can emerge as a not just a great VC, but also someone who understands the need for collaboration and make sure the right people in the right room. So a little bit more sacrifice, unfortunately. I hate the word. I hate the fact that it has to exist, but because it does, I want to make sure that we're concentrating that and making sure that we're actually cultivating leadership just as much as we're identifying it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 1,000%, and I love the fellowship piece. We're working on something similar with Goody Nation. I know we're coming up on time, but for me, some of the things that I look at is, piggybacking on what John said, it is passion. Justin said it's sacrifice. I mean, the reality of it, when you're a community leader, you have power. That is real. I mean, you're essentially, it's like being in like a government. You're a mayor, you're a city council person, so on and so forth. You have power, and so we know from various movies, on Spider-Man and Star Wars and stuff like that, with that power comes responsibility, and power does corrupt, right? Power does corrupt. I mean, you can easily like trust and believe, like, especially over like the last 2 years, I could $1 million just off the number of people hitting me up, right? I'm not trying to say like I'm the perfect, because I got many flaws, but I believe from a value standpoint, you have to think about what's best for the community first and foremost. And I think in many cases that does seem you have to kind of take yourself back a lot. And so what I look for is people that do have that type of commitment, that type of kind of integrity, and so on and so forth, and can think about others first, and also think about how to connect the dots, right? That's part of it. Another thing is people that can, going back to what Ernest said a while back around collective impact, and I believe in that philosophy as well. What are our priorities and goals, not only for the next 12 months, but how can you zoom out and think about the next 3 to 5 and even 10 years, right? Tech in particular is changing so fast. Cities are changing so fast. Think about what's happening around gentrification in like the last 5 to 7 to 8 years in the city, and all these factors intersect. They're going to impact our community here in Atlanta. So I look at people that can think about, that have at least the capability to think about stuff in the immediate sense of things, but also they think about what's happening in 3 to 5 years and making sure other folks in the community are prepared. So very tactically speaking, those that are responsible for software engineers and developers in Metro Atlanta that are Black, I'm thinking about what are your priorities and goals for that sub community. And I'm also thinking about who are the people that are thinking about that can hold other people accountable. Same thing around design and product management and so on and so forth. On the VC side, we're looking at people that have the capability to think about, okay, what are our goals for the Black investor community here in Metro Atlanta over the next 12 months, but also 3 to 5 months. And so, like as Justin is alluding to, we have to kind of attach people at the hip. Once we identify people, we have to attach them at the hip, get them experience, and then they eventually will turn into the leaders, and making sure there's a constant flow of one person steps up, the other person comes in. They assume the role, another set of people come in below them. And it's almost like what amounts like a city council is how I look at it, right? Developing almost like a city council, like with making sure there's a constant flow of people, like young people from the AUC and Georgia State and so on and so forth, making sure that all representatives across the entire Metro Atlanta area are represented, again, from north, south, east to west, so to speak, and all different types of sub-communities as well. So that's how I think about developing leaders, developing the next generation of leaders, because again, I believe that community takes consistent and constant nurture and care, or if not, it kind of, unfortunately, I feel like it falls apart pretty fast. So we got about 5 minutes left. This is going to be the lightning round. The lightning round. I want to ask like your vision for the Atlanta Black tech community. Lightning round. I'll start with John. Like, again, this is probably like the 25, 30 second version, if that.
Okay, 25 to 30 seconds. All right, I'll do my best. So my vision for the Atlanta Black tech community is, seeing so many of our people working at these different organizations, building really cool things. I want to see, like, my vision is definitely unity among all the organizations. We have a lot of organizations here in Atlanta, and one of the things that I want to see is unity among all organizations, all working together towards a common goal of elevating our people.
There it is. We'll go Kylan and then Kelly.
Yeah, I'll say, I think the future of the Black tech ecosystem here in Atlanta is going to be really grounded, I think, in interconnectivity across, our corporations and then the startup community. I think a lot of it is going to be necessity as we start to get back into this world of, meeting in person and convening. That's what we're good for in our community. We love to come together and fellowship. And so I think that that's going to be a really huge opportunity for us to make sure that we fill in a lot of these gaps. And I see that over the next few years of us being more intentional about finding ways to bring people into the community and be able to get them into the right place that they need.
There it is. Kelly.
Yeah, I definitely plus one to all of that, as well as continuing to build those connections and bridging those gaps and amplifying each other. I think that's super important, amplifying the work that we're doing, going to the new generation for ideas and nurturing that, and then empowering all these different communities and our allies to continue to build out this Atlanta tech scene.
There. Before we go to Ernest and Justin, I want to say, if you're watching, if you want to drop a comment on what your vision is, what you want to see from the Atlanta Black tech community moving forward, we would love to gather those thoughts. But Ernest, very quick.
Yes, specifically, I want to see CS education in all high school and middle schools. Period. Right? There's no reason, like, our K-12 systems in Georgia produce some of the most Black students going to college or just going to the workforce in general. We need CS education in all those classrooms.
There it is. Justin.
I see greater collaboration, hence the name. So always want more of that. I think failing faster, now that we and knowing that there's a soft landing spot, I think helps, right? You can go work for a company for a couple of years before you work on your next thing. And then I would say specifically that will help me just in the spaces in the broader startup ecosystem is more of the right capital at the right stage to the right companies. I think that's critical and paramount to making sure that this organism continues to grow in a healthy way. So I would say those are my visions and the things that I would want for the city.
There it is. Okay, so let's talk quickly about next step in this minute and change. So one thing we're looking to do, make Atlanta Black Tech an official nonprofit for the last 5 years, kind of is about the domain. We've been very informal around doing stuff again because a lot of us have been doing our own thing. We haven't had a official group or person to kind of run the organization's official convening body, and so we'll be taking steps to making an official nonprofit and looking for board members, and we'll then be kind of focusing on this structure, almost like a city council, so to speak, where we have representatives from various parts of the city, industries, roles, and other sub communities to make sure that everyone has set their own priorities and goals that level up to a larger priority and goal around improving the number of Black people in tech in Metro Atlanta, but also the quality of them as well, right? So that's that. Look out for more words on that and looking to fill, the team and stuff. Second part is around merch. So we have a new website now, atlantablacktech.org. You can go there, check it out. You can get one of these hoodies or a t-shirt. There's some other t-shirts and stuff like that. All the funds related to this will go toward operations of Atlanta Black Tech and helping to get things spun up. We're looking to bring on a community coordinator or manager or something to that effect. So you can cop a hoodie, you can cop a t-shirt. There's another one that's black on black with the logo stretched out like the logo at the bottom of the screen. Go to atlblacktech.org to cop yours. And then there are a few events and stuff like that coming up. So Atlanta Innovation Month kicks off today, but there are some other events coming up in the next 2 weeks. A number of us here on the call have those events. So if you're in the tech space, particularly in the startup space, you need to be out. Now I'm an alpha. I don't like saying the phrase "be out" for my Q friends, but you need to be out, right? You need to be out during this Atlanta Innovation Week, which is really a smaller version of the traditional month, coming up in the second and third weeks of October. And then finally, I think we need to do some type of holiday event. The last one we had was December of 2019 at the Gathering Spot. I mean, Monday night, just club gathering spot, came together at the last minute. No one knew at the time that the pandemic was going to come. So we got to do like Atlanta Black Tech holiday event. So this has been awesome. I know we're over on time. I'm assuming panelists, people can reach out to you on LinkedIn. So let's get it, y'all. Let's come together, unity, set goals and priorities and things like that, and be out during October and during the holiday season. So thanks again for watching. Let's get it.
Yeah, thank you for your wonderful leadership, Joey, and awesome work with everyone on the panel.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
you. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Peace.
Thank you.
Peace.
Peace.